We're recording. We're recording. So let's be entertaining and interesting and
Yeah.
fascinating and spiritual. You go first.
Hello. Hi, Elijah. I'm
Hello.
glad to be doing this again.
Yeah.
And I'm
Hair of the
looking
dog that
forward.
bit us.
That's right. And I'm looking forward to mid-November. I know a few
Me too.
people have signed up for the breath work, so
Mm.
I'm getting excited to get more names on there. And I think that would be a great place to start. Maybe you can kind of give us a brief description of the breath that you use.
Of the breath work itself.
Yep. How you use
Okay.
it.
Well, um, all breath work is good. Breath work's the conscious use of your breath. Uh, Different purposes for different kinds of breath work. In the style that effigy comes from is mouth breathing style that comes from India 5,000 years ago. Uh, in the same family as holotropic was really popular for a while there. Not really the same as Wim Hof, even though Wim Hof is most popular. And I think that the purpose of this breath work is to clear trauma, to get connected to who you really are in essence before all the troubles you have in and out.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think we talked about that last time of like chipping away all the things that are not us through the breath.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
hardly call breath work chipping away. Like it's more like
Like jackhammering.
jackhammering, sandblasting. Yeah, I mean it's. Uh, why don't I just demonstrate the breath so people know what it is?
Okay.
So you know, many of the techniques, like Wim Hof, for example, there's a certain amount of inhales and exhales. So your mind is kind of like trying to do this technique. This doesn't involve any knowledge or skill. That's what makes it easy and hard, which is you're just breathing in the center of the chest and really full on the inhale, and then on the exhale, let go. It might not come through on the microphone because it
Mm.
might echo cancel me, but so inhale really full and like this, etc., for 1 hour, no stopping. Don't use your throat, don't use your jaw, don't use your muscles laying on your back. So as physically easy as possible, but um, the challenge is just to breathe in full and say, yeah, I really want to do this for an hour, and all your shit will be up. That's a technical term.
um, yeah, and maybe that's a good place to go. Like the first thing that's going to happen is some sort of resistance. The mind is going to come right in the beginning. Correct.
Do you want to speak to it? Like, uh,
Sure, because I have lots of experience.
tell me your love hate relationship with this particular technique.
Well, it
And with
pushes.
me as the person probably triggering and bothering you a lot, both during and after sessions.
I wouldn't say bothering. I think the resistance comes up. All the things, like my mind will try to distract me. I'll start thinking about, things I need to get done, what I'm going to eat later today, whatever it is. It's just
Why
all
do
the
you
way.
think that happens?
Um, because I don't
I
think
mean,
it wants to go where I'm asking it to
mm,
go. It wants to hold on to that. I mean, that
mm,
became who I am, right? And unfortunately, or fortunately, but I mean, I think it's just one of those things that we want to hold on to those things. We want to hold on to those narratives. So many things can challenge that, but breath work definitely does in a very, God, I was going to say calm, but I wouldn't say it's a calm manner, but very direct manner. There's
mm.
no, I don't know, like with plant medicine or other types of other modalities, I think they can kind of come in the side door or whatever, where I think breath work is it's just you and your breath. And it's just going so quickly to those spaces. And I think that just fires up your amygdala for sure. And it's not comfortable. So yeah, I feel the resistance a lot, and it does take some time to get past that, which when you said, I don't remember what word you used, but annoying or something like that. I don't find what you do annoying at all. I think it's just a reminder of like, this is what we want to do. We sign up for this, we show up for this, but yet, of course, we're going to have resistance come in, and it's how we're going to work with it. And I think you and Sarah are both great at saying, no, you're, whatever the cues are, just to keep reminding us of why we're here and to keep moving through that resistance.
That's interesting. I think, well, I tend to uh, want to point out where the resistance is, and I think that's what I meant by being annoying. But thank you for telling me
Mm,
it's not as annoying as I thought it was to you. Uh, but I think that the breath work mirrors life, and the resistance that we have in our life shows up in the patterning of the breathing. So everybody kind of comes into it on some level of feeling resistant because the it's not you were talking about narrative. I think it's more attachment to the mind. Like the
mhm,
mind has a way of trying to keep us on track by perceiving and interpreting and guiding. And
mhm,
the mind is not the soul and it's not the higher self. So the guidance is always to try to get you to avoid pain, and
right.
it's the pain of those patterns. And I think the thing that makes breath work so challenging is also the thing that makes it so transformational, is that if you're willing to do the breath work in the at the moments that you're feeling that resistance or these thoughts are coming up, you're going to, like, it cracks open and you enter into another world where
Mhm,
it's the world of who you really are, and fears, phobias, misery, anxiety, worry, all that just literally disappears like
mhm,
instantly in that moment. It doesn't mean it's changed for the rest of your life, but it's definitely shows you a possibility and it changes the direction. Yeah.
mhm. Um, so one thing I would love to know more about is like I've had breathwork sessions where I didn't fully get into it. None of them have been with you. um, but the ones I have really gone far with, I do wonder where I went. Like, I mean, is the conscious mind just offline?
During the breath work,
Yeah.
or are you saying should it be?
Mm, well, should it be? Yeah. Should it be offline? Is that kind of the goal?
I don't think it's as straightforward as that. Well, first of all, uh, you know, you're bringing up a point without realizing you're bringing it up. That the relationship with the facilitator is really important. Like, and I know that when I'm in person with you, it's going to be way different
Mhm,
because in some techniques like holotropic, they just let you do whatever you're going to do.
mhm,
You're really told, and also they pair people up. So you're paired up with somebody who is also untrained. So that, like, that's not always safe for people. Also between men and women, I have just had
right.
so many stories I've heard for women where people are inappropriate, in the way that they're facilitating. But I think that, like, my job is not to be a taskmaster, but to, if you're drifting, like, I think there's two kinds of going away, to answer your question. One is the avoidance, and the
Mhm,
way that you end up going off to the mind, and then
mhm,
you just space out. And then my role is to help kind of bring you back so that you won't avoid, because if I'm going to have any job, it's to keep you going up to a
mhm,
point, because it's your choice. And if you choose to breathe full, then the empowerment is going to be yours, not, oh, because he made me do it, so he's the cool one. No, it has to be because you chose to keep going. But
mhm,
I'm there to sort of guide that, and through my availability, like, it's either what I say or I don't say. So there's that part of it. But then there's another thing, and I think this is an advanced thing to, I don't know, for whoever's listening, but between you and I, like I know you're a facilitator, other breath work, but for effigy, like I see that there's two parts. Like you have to use the conscious mind in order to sort of destroy the conscious mind. The conscious mind, you give it the job. The mind always likes something to do, you know,
Mhm.
give it your taxes or give you keep it busy. So you say, okay, just focus on the breath. So if you focus on the breath, there becomes the destruction of the very focuser on the breath. And at some point later on, it can happen that in order for a person to really like release some real core and deep traumas, they just disappear. They leave. There's nobody there. And you can really see it in what's going on from a facilitator side. I think that that's a good thing. It's like because the conscious mind will be breathing really full, but then in a way, all that activity is preventing deeper things to happen. And I feel like the facilitator's role is to know what's what, when to leave somebody so that they can clear something out, or when to like poke on somebody's door and say, hey, you know,
Mhm.
what are you're avoiding? Did I
Hmm.
answer your question?
Yeah, and that just brings up, like, how do you know?
So funny. Well, it's funny because these are facilitator training questions. So shocking that you would ask them.
Right.
Um, uh, the well, next year we just finished the page an hour ago, but next year we're going to have a 9-month program, and it'll
Mhm,
be a personal development program for anybody. But some people can take a facilitator training track in it, and uh, the whole role is not so much like what to do and what not to do, but how to be available, because it's impossible not to make mistakes. It's
mhm,
and you get to learn, but it's you're always in a mirror. So even when somebody's breathing, you're always sort of in your own stuff, even if you're not breathing. And so
mhm,
the training is to be able to be available to yourself so that if you can read yourself correctly, you will read someone else. I mean, the fascinating thing to me, even after 35 years, tens of thousands of people, is like if I'm look down and watch what somebody's doing, I don't know really what there's going on in their inner story. Like, and someone will come out and say, I was, uh, you know, I had this memory of drowning or something. It's like that's not necessarily like I'll read the energy correctly, but so the goal is to try to be able to feel into that. But not everybody has a great gift with that. So sometimes if someone comes from a massage therapy background, the way they put their hands on is the way they read. Other people like Jim, who like he's not
mhm,
the most like he's not like the energy reader guy, but he's this kind of loving community family person, and people feel really love when they're with him. So what I've encouraged him to do is like to hold that space of like this loving presence and not try to be like a genius energy worker. And for me, I come from a background of music. It's so important to me that like how I use music is such a big part of my transmission, my way of doing the work. And I don't think I could never train anybody to do it the way that I do it because I created the music and I'm picking intuitively. But Sarah, you only now she just uses my music. So she's very good at using the music too. But that's
mhm,
something that's important to me because music was very transcendent to me. It took me to God. So like when I first started doing breath work, I was like I used all the music that I loved that had moved me. And then at some point I wanted to have music that no one had ever heard before. So I just set about creating it. So that's a long answer to your short question.
mhm. Got
But
it,
I'll
though. It makes
say
a
about
lot.
you that if you were facilitating, I I believe that one of your gifts, without knowing you too well, but like well enough, is that when you're out of your own way, you're out of the mind and you're out of the kind of the judgmental, more critical part of things. You have a very simple heart. And I think that you just know yes or no, it's this or it's that. And I feel
Mhm.
like if you really, became only that in your life and trusted that when you'd sit with people, you would just know the answer to everything. And it would be simple answers.
Mm. Okay.
That's my little free reading.
I love it.
Is it
Um,
true? Do you think that there's truth in that?
I do. Yeah. I do think there's some truth in that.
I think you make things way more complicated than they are when you're in your trauma patterns and you find yourself over merging with what other people um, are going through, which is a gift of a healer, is be able to read other people's energy. But it's
Mhm.
also a gift to not read other people's energy when you're built like that, and
Mhm.
just to know what your own truth is.
So are you kind of saying just let people have big emotions and it's not doesn't have to be about me or something I need to take on?
Well, I'm not giving you any advice if like I'm just making comments.
Yeah,
Uh,
no, I
Yeah, I mean, partly like when I'm in a training with people, it's like, oh, it's happening in real time, and we're saying, well, what do you see? And you ask me what I see, and like, part of my joy of being a training people and facilitating is I never tell people like there's that my answer is the only thing. I just tell people what I think because
right.
everybody's perception is a little different. Obviously, I have more experience, but I have a unique way of looking things of my own, but I'm always interested in what's your unique way of looking at it. And training people, every single person kind of has a unique transmission, and we want to
Mhm.
bring that out. So not everybody's just the same flavor. And
Mhm.
that's why also it's not, it wouldn't be easy for someone like me to train 100 people at once because like holotropy, will have hundreds of people, in a training, whatever, but you don't you can't it's hard to you can't run it like a factory. It's impossible.
Mhm. Right.
It Yeah. So, we did an online facilitator training during the pandemic, and it really worked out badly in many ways because we were not that involved
Mhm.
with the people who were going through it, not really involved at all with some of the people, and so they were not getting any real feedback about what they were doing, and inevitably weren't really doing effigy work and weren't really respecting what they did get. So this is why, like, next year I will be limiting it to 12 people, and everybody will be having a very direct relationship with me.
So that brings me to another question around your breath work in particular. Well, maybe more general. What do you think is really creating more of a breath work movement right now? And is it sustainable? Where do you think this is going to go?
You're asking about the
Just the like
wellness world.
overall breath work. Yeah. It feels like it's very everybody's really into it. And yeah, and I'm
Well,
just wondering where
I
you
think
think
the reason, I think the reason why I think breath work has come to the mainstream. It's still not really in the mainstream. I had a vision 25 years ago, and a few visions I've had where I saw myself at Madison Square Gardens breathing 10,000 people, and with a live band, and I I forgot about it, and then I somewhere in the before the pandemic, I wondered about it, and like, how would this ever happen? Um,
Mhm.
and I still think that I would like to be a person who brings breathwork into the mainstream. It's funny, our dear friend Wes, like, he's moving to Austin and is to be with the closest friend and do some stuff there and like whatever. But his friends with Joe Rogan. So Wes is like trying to, like, how can I get to breathe Joe Rogan? It's like, I don't know. Anyway, I think that breathwork is moving more to the mainstream for two reasons. One, it's a very democratic practice. It goes beyond race, creed, color, tribe distinctions and differences. Everybody can be their own entrepreneur, businessman with it. And I think that speaks to the time of like, I got breath work. I can just share it with you. If you do it, you'll get benefit. It's like it's got this simplicity to it that our times kind of need, because people are just so, in my opinion, just fed up with relying on institutions, things inside the mainstream, as if the medical system is going to take care of you, or even, and well, so that's one thing. The other thing is that I think yoga like became the new Christian church. It's like everyone got ordained. There was a church on every block, and that time seems to have possibly run its course. Like it's not, the pandemic also just changed whether people were in person or online. Like you can get a class of anything anywhere around the world. But I
Mhm.
think that it's still up for grabs, like an immediate visceral transformation for people. And I don't think there's anything else out there that has quite the impact that breathwork has. And of course, I think mine is the best breathwork or whatever. But I think that what I hold to, because I don't really necessarily know other people's techniques now, is that if you breathe really full for an hour, it will change your life every
Mhm.
single time. And I've been doing it for 35 years and I hold on to that. And that's the best part about it. It's simple. And I think that that's what many people want. It's
Mhm.
just the I hope that the people looking for it find the breath work they're looking for before the mainstream gobbles it up and turns it into some product,
Mhm.
and then makes it. It's kind of like I used to take niacin in high dosages. It was good for cholesterol and stuff. And
Mhm.
you flush like crazy. It's kind of insane. And then it lowers cholesterol. So then as soon as that started to become popular, the AMA created a product that was like a niacin that you could buy that didn't have a flush. But the only reason why it worked was because of the flushing. But people
Yeah.
don't want to do the flushing, so they sell it. They sell without. So there's so many things that like were so good that just become so useless by the time they get into the mainstream. So I'm hoping to catch the wave just before that happens.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I love that, and this might be like a different time that we go back over this, but I would love to know, so for me, I wonder what the integration looks like after breath work when you don't in the moment, you might not have, like, visuals, like if you're working with plant medicine or if you're doing any other modality, you might have a little bit more substance to work with maybe while you're going through it. So I wonder what integration looks like for the majority of people after a big trauma release. What would you suggest people do after that?
Well, in my world, we just have as many structures as we can to support people, and that was kind of one of the big things we were doing during the pandemic. It's just realizing that actually when we were doing breath work in China, and so much stuff was coming up for people. It was just not, and we realized like the breath work was so much a smaller part of what people were making of it afterwards. And because in China they'd never done anything like that before. And like, what are these sensations? Why am I feeling something? Like it was, they're trained in the culture to like just override all that.
Oh,
And
yeah.
yeah, so um we send people an email and we have a free community forum, and they can book private sessions if they want that. But there's lots of free things, and also just information and resources on our website. But it's a big topic, integration, because it depends how much of it you do and how much change you want to go through and how much time you have for that. So I naturally like people, we send out stuff and here's the free things, and like just give the suggestion of the things that they can do. But obviously, I think, as you know, the deep end of the pool is having a daily practice, meaning that you're always, if you really want to integrate and you really want to grow, you have to have a spiritual practice of some kind. I
Mhm.
have a Sufi teacher, he calls it the spiritual gym. Like, what do you want to do with the spiritual gym? And breath work isn't necessarily a daily spiritual practice. But the process of gaining more awareness on your own as a daily thing, to me, is so fundamental for the bad times. You do it in the good times for the bad times. So I say it's a three-legged stool. There's practices, and then having a teacher. Like, you can win the high school tennis tournament with your wicked forehand, but if you want to play at Wimbledon, you need a teacher. So getting a practice from a teacher. And then third is going out into the marketplace, like go back out into life and like test your practice. So to me, the biggest point of integration is being able to have some personal development going on every day. And that's very hard for a lot of people. They'll say it's time, but I don't think it's time, because people are scrolling away on their phone and whatever. Like,
Mhm.
even 10 minutes a day can just really, really make the bridge. The issue of integration is that when you do breath work, you kick up all this debris, and it's like, okay, you're in the attic and you just start sweeping away, and then you choke to death. Like, you have to open the windows or whatever. So when all this material comes up, you have to have a way to move that energy. And that's really where having some practice that doesn't involve meeting the needs of others or the world around you or making money. So, and
Mm.
anybody can reach out to me at any time and ask a question about this stuff. So it's not like I'm unavailable.
Yeah,
So
and by kicking things up, you don't necessarily need to understand what it is that you're kicking up, but we always want to make correlations, connections to what's coming up to in our daily life, don't you think?
I think I think as Westerners, we definitely want to know why. And
Mhm,
I find if I try to like tell someone not to do that, it just puts them into resistance. But I think it's a step to sort of understand some cause and effect and that sort of thing. But ultimately, I think what's valuable about processing, like we're doing right now,
mhm,
is if it helps us to focus in the right way. But I think the thing that you're talking about is that sometimes people just want to get into some right idea of right and wrong about something, and get into some fiction, some storytelling about why something is the way it is. And I think that's what you're saying. And I'm not sure that's that necessary. It is at the beginning. Like, these things happen to me and that's affected me in a certain way. But as you get going, and particularly after you do breath work, you don't need to look at really any of it. And
okay,
that's part of the goodness of it, is like, oh, good, I don't have to figure this out. I just got rid of it. It's just garbage and it's gone. It's
mhm,
dealing with the process afterwards. That's what we want to talk about. Well, what do we do now? Not so much what happened before, or even what happened in the breath work.
and is that, like, after the breath work, just being able to, like you said, have a spiritual practice, but slow down the mind and just kind of almost connect back into that space that you found during breath work? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, when I said you have this simple wisdom, like, you just gave the answer, right? Because you already that's your answer. If I was sitting with you, that's what you would say. So yeah, I agree with you. Um, I would say slowing down the mind could provide judgment for people who can't do that. So I would say it's not necessarily slowing it down, it's just learning how not to. The thing that I wrote a little bit about it in my book, but next year, my next book, I explain the whole system, but I say there's just four levels of the mind. So just
Mhm,
this one level that everybody's dealing with. And if you learn not to bias yourself to that level, then you'll suffer a lot less, even if it's running rampant like a maniac, which is what it does.
mhm.
Mine
Yeah,
does.
right. That makes sense. Do you wanna tell us more about your training? Because 'Cause I'd love to hear more.
Um, Well, how about I'm looking at the time thinking, who the fuck's going to want to listen to this, listen to a half hour of this? Maybe we'll table this and then next week can do that. Excuse me. And if you're talking to anybody, see if there's anything anybody does want to ask.
Okay.
Because talking about the training, like in coming to Boise, I'm not necessarily like I'm not there for that unless people are interested in the training. So
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. That sounds good.
All right. Do you
Thank
feel
you.
cut off? All right.
No,
No
not at
problem.
all. No, I thought that was great.
Okay. End